right, so I wanted to go over some concepts related to Heidegger's understanding of our existence and the importance of authenticity in living a meaningful or purposeful life, or approaching our death with some level of confidence in our life as having been, well lived in a way. So it's helpful to start with the way Heidegger thinks about meaning, right? So this is one of the importance, and you saw this in the text. This question he asks about, what does it mean to be? What is the meaning of being? And so we oftentimes brush this off. We don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about this, but being, notice this is a verb. It's a gerund. It's something that's active, and so this notion of being, and oh, by the way, so when I put these terms up here, these are the page numbers in our text where they are referred to. This is basically straight out of the index of the text, right? So just if you want to find out kind of where exactly our text addresses these concepts as it describes Heidegger, then you could use this helpful list of indexed items. All right, so being. So ordinarily, we might think of ourselves as like entities that, we are things. We oftentimes think of ourselves that way. I'm a thing. Now, whether we want to say that I am essentially like a soul, or I am essentially a person or a body, Heidegger thinks that this is not quite how we actually experience our existence. It's not quite how we do that. Being, it is our existence in the world is active. It is something. It's as if we are not our utmost. Our primary existence is not a matter of essence, but rather a matter of existence. Right? We are existing in the world. All right. So it's this sort of engagement with the world, as he'll describe later, that is really the central attribute of our experience of the world, or of our existence. We are beings, not necessarily things or entity, or we're not necessarily essences, but rather we are beings. We are existences. Right? And there's an important difference for Heidegger. Right? So he sees this more active. And so this notion of Dasein, Da is there, and Sein is being. Dasein is being there. And so oftentimes Heidegger would prefer to refer to us as we are there, right? We are being there is an important notion that has to do with the idea that when we think of ourselves as existing, well, what we're doing is we are being there, right? So there's somewhere that we are, right? So we exist in the world, right? So we are not simply abstract notions or detached substances that can be distinguished from the world. No, rather we are integrated in the world. Right? We are part of the world, and we experience the world actively. Right? We exist in it. All right. So yeah, this leads to this concept of being in the world. Right. And so this embeddedness. It's a very similar idea as Dasein. Right. We are there. Right. So now notice I want to share. Yeah. Right. One of the in the notes, there's this notion that there's this subject-object split between us and the world, or between our bodies and our minds. There's this kind of dualism that we get from thinkers like Descartes. Right. Now, we didn't go over Descartes in this class. Descartes is a kind of modern thinker and not necessarily part of the existentialist movement. Largely, existentialism is a rejection of some earlier presuppositions that came to us philosophically, including a rejection of the Cartesian idea of the separation between the body and the mind. No, we are actually we are something we are integrated in the world, right? So now this as an example, right? So the example that's sometimes used. Well, when you see an object, and we'll talk about that when we deal with this as well. When you see an object, your experience of that object, so you may feel as though, well, okay, there is a rock or there is a tree, but your experience of the rock or your experience of the tree, your engagement with it when you observe it, is that you notice not just its beingness, or not just its thingness, but you also notice its function, what it is meant to do, or what it is doing, or what you can do with it. Right? You think about those potentials. So Heidegger wants to encourage us to take a step away from these ideas that we are kind of like detached or abstract observers of reality. Instead, we are engaged people who experience not so much reality, but kind of like surreality, right? We see things as functional, as operative. We imagine things or observe things in terms of what they do, not so much in terms of what they are, what they do rather than what they are. Okay, so yeah, and their purpose, right? So a hammer is not just an object with properties. Rather, we think of a hammer as something that is designed for hammering, right? It's what it's for. And so Heidegger, the way he, excuse me, it's got a little call there. He distinguishes distinguishes something ready to hand. That means that it is something for use, right? Which was what we were just describing, versus present at hand. That's his term for the idea of detached and observable things, right? But we don't. Heidegger doesn't think that this is primary. In other words, the way we think about things is not essentially in terms of their objectness, that they're being objects. Rather, we think of things essentially in terms of their use, right? Their utility, right? What they can do and what I can do with them. The ready-to-hand idea, right? These are ready for use is how we primarily perceive the world in Heidegger's understanding. All right, now one of my favorite concepts from Heidegger is thrownness, and this is what Heidegger notices about our existence and the absurdity of our existence. None of us really chose the status of our birth. We didn't. There's nothing that we remember before our own existence, and even in the earlier parts of our existence, it's not much that we remember. And there's this weird question we can ask about why I am living this life. Why am I not living your life? Why are you not living my life? It's arbitrary that I was given, or to use Heidegger's word, I was thrown into this existence based on some series of past events, but it's really a mystery why I am sort of thrown here, right? And it's a mystery that might not have a satisfying solution, and so this is a part of our existence that we accept and recognize, right? And we are thrown into our existence by our past, or we think about ourselves in terms of our past. But Heidegger wants us to remember too that we need to understand ourselves as being involved in the present, right? This is part of what it means to enjoy our lives and to live authentically, is to look at the present moment as something that is unique, that is special. I mean, they actually, almost like I almost wanted you to pause this video, pause the video, and spend a moment looking at the stuff around you. Look at how interesting it is that you have whatever this desk is. That think about its features, right? Whatever, if you're at a desk, or if you're at a table, or if you're on your phone or whatever. Think about how unique that is. How cool it is that you are kind of nested in this body where you have access to these hands that can move things around, right? You have a presence and an influence on the world. There's a lot of freedom that you have in that. You can make decisions. You can determine the course of much of the rest of your life. That is really awesome that you are thrown into this existence. And so absorb as much of it as you can, right? Enjoy it, right? Be alive. Be engaged in the world. Soak, or as one poet put it, suck the marrow out of life, right? So be engaged in the present, right? Recognize things right now as they are, right? Okay. All right. So yeah, more on thrownness. Okay, we sort of covered that in these notes, right? Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so now, more about authenticity. Now, in these notes, you also notice that there is some coverage of this as well in the text. There's coverage of all these concepts in the text, but yeah, this is valuable to consider. The they, or das Man in German. By the way, don't worry too much about the German terms here. I mean, this is not a German class, although, of course, Heidegger and Nietzsche were writing in German. Sartre was writing a lot in French. But don't worry about those languages. Just focus on the concepts, right? And how they matter for your understanding of existentialism and philosophy and your life and the pursuit of the true and the good, which is what philosophy is all about. The they, or das Man, that refers to social conventions, right? So what other people think of us, what other people expect of us, the patterns and the culture that you've acquired and adapted and adopted from others, right? So think about the way that we sometimes are bothered or fixated almost on what other people think of us, how other people perceive us. And Heidegger thinks that leads us to kind of live for the sake of other people's expectations, live for the sake of other people's judgments, or live under their watchful eye regularly. Heidegger thinks that this kind of concern takes us away from our individual authentic lives. It distracts us from being genuinely who we are, or experiencing the world in a genuine fashion or an authentic fashion. We mustn't be so concerned about conforming to the world, right? And so the way we live authentically is we recognize our separation. We distinguish ourselves from social conventions. Now that doesn't mean we never follow social conventions. It can be very helpful to follow social conventions. It's one of the ways in which we engage the world. Of course that's the case. We don't want to defy all social conventions. We still, wear clothes. We still, fix our hair and so forth. And that's, in order to, fit in with society. But we must not be dominated by these social conventions, lest we lose our authenticity. Right. So inauthenticity, obviously, again, living according to the notes, living according to the expectations of das Man, of the others, of society around us. That leads to inauthenticity. All right. Authenticity, owning your own existence, your own choices, recognizing your individuality and your mortality. Now, this is going to become a very important concept in a moment. Not isolation, right? So in other words, you're not totally withdrawing from society, but rather a transformed way of being with others. You are together with other people in a way that recognizes your uniqueness and your own individual experience of the world, while at the same time interacting with others and respecting other people and their individuality as well, right? All right, it's a matter of taking ownership over your own existence, right? Owning one's existence choices. All right, now being toward death. Death is something that really gives ourselves our lives meaning. If we were to imagine, if you were to live forever, right, and then there's initially the idea of living forever, say on Earth, might be very appealing. We don't have to worry about an end point, right? Or we wouldn't. But it's that end point. It's the fact that our lives will one day end that gives us a sense of urgency, gives us a sense of exigency to really get everything there is to get out of our lives, right? It's because one day we will die that we are able to truly live authentically. It's our expectation of death and our anticipation of death that gives us life, surprisingly. Right? All right. Now, I want to note some. Here's a video of Heidegger's philosophy. It's just an overview of that. Here's and this is an overview. I guess there's taking a little bit to load. And this is an overview specifically of Heidegger's best-known work, Being and Time. All right, and here's some notes, an overview of some of the chapters of Being and Time, which will help you kind of grasp Heidegger's key points in Being and Time. But we just kind of went over the essential elements of his philosophy. All right, but I also want to point you to several clips that I've put on the LMS that I want you to appreciate. These are expressions of some Heideggerian ideas. There is a clip from a movie called Wings of Desire. Wings of Desire is a movie from the 1980s that imagines what it might be like if there were angels who are not humans studying humans. Right? So there's non-humans but very interested in human experience. What might that be like? And so, in a way, this is an expression of existentialism, thinking about what angels would think about these little elements of existence. Please play this video and enjoy it. Also, here's another clip that has to do with living authentically. It's from an outstanding movie I recommend to anybody called Waking Life. By the way, at the very bottom, the very last module here, I've got some videos and resources, and some of it is clips from Waking Life and just some description of that and so forth. Right. So okay. Now I'm sorry. Back up to here, and here's a little clip from Seinfeld that I came across recently. I thought it was another outstanding expression of a Heideggerian existentialism and the approach to as we face death. And let's see. Okay, and this scene from Anger Management. It's Jack Nicholson's character asking Adam Sandler's character, "Who are you?" Right, and you'll notice in the clip Adam Sandler has difficulty really, comprehensively answering the question, and you'll see this, right? And Heidegger clearly has an answer for this. You aren't a thing, right? You are activity. You are engagement with the world, and that in a way defies definition. Right? There's not really anything that completely defines you, and that's a good thing. That's how we live authentically. We are not necessarily we're not things that can be put in a box or labeled with great accuracy. Instead, we are being in the world, right? So we are Dasein. We are being there. Okay, so and then finally, here's a clip from a really interesting series that dropped on, I think it was in Netflix a few years ago, called Midnight Mass. So this is a scene from Midnight Mass where somebody talks about, when he dies, like what happens when you die. I just find it an interesting kind of discussion about that. Heidegger is very interested in reflecting on our death and the aloneness that we're going to feel